Okay, we are nearing the end of our Rebuilding Together series, going through the book of Nehemiah. And I really hope you've been enjoying going through this book together. One more week. Next week, Kara is going to be preaching, and she's going to finish out the series for us. So you're going to want to make sure to be here on Palm Sunday. We are going to have palm branches for people to wave. It's going to be a great Sunday. Kara's preaching. You're going to want to come and be here. So a 10-year-old boy was failing math. His parents had tried everything. They had done private tutors. They had even done hypnosis, trying to get him to improve his math grades, but to no avail. Finally, at the insistence of a family friend, the family decided to enroll their son in a private Christian school. And after the first day of this boy going to this private Christian school, the parents were surprised when he walked in the door right after school with a stern, focused face and a determined expression. And he marched straight to his room, past them, and he quietly closed the door. And for the next 2 hours, all he did was work on math. The parents called him to dinner. He came out and he ate dinner. He didn't really say much. And then right after dinner, he went straight back to his room and worked on math for the rest of the evening. This became a pattern every day. Ever since attending this school, he would constantly hungry all the time. Gross sneeze or cough through the air. We can't even see it. And then it can just sort of work its way up our nostril. You know, maybe it landed on our finger. And then we go to pick our nose, and then it goes from our finger into our nose. And it just takes a little bit getting in through a tiny little opening, and then what does it do? It begins to replicate itself. It begins to build upon, and pretty soon it takes over our entire body, and we're feeling ill. And that's the thing. If you and I don't stay focused and we keep these openings and these cracks available, it could end up becoming our downfall. Let me state it this way. When it comes to rebuilding our lives, you and I cannot just rebuild the walls. We also have to install the gates. Let's look at Nehemiah this morning and see how he stayed focused to the very end, making sure that those doors and gates got put in. Because you and I need this insight so that you and I, as we near the end of life getting back to normal, things getting back on course, we need to learn how to stay focused the way Nehemiah stayed focused. The first thing that Nehemiah does is he stays focused on the mission. Let's look at verses 1 through 4. We already read verse 1. Starting in verse 2, it says, Sanballat and Geshem sent me this message. Come, let us meet together in one of the villages on the plain of Ono. But they were scheming to harm me. So I sent messengers to them with this reply. I am carrying on a great project and cannot come down to you. Why should the work stop while I leave it and go down to you? 4 times they sent me the same message, and each time I gave them the same answer. Now, if you were with us a few weeks ago, these are the same enemies that Nehemiah was facing in chapter 4. And they used tactics of belittling, mockery, and threats of violence. And now this didn't work. They overcame the adversity. And what does Sanballat now do? He changes the tactics of how he is going to try to distract and keep Nehemiah from completing the work. He says, Nehemiah, let's have a conversation. I don't know about you, but someone inviting me to have a conversation is a little bit easier to tolerate than someone who's mocking me, belittling me, and making threats of violence against me. I'd rather deal with the person that's inviting me to a conversation. That seems harmless, doesn't it? Maybe there's this hope that, hey, we've been adversaries, things haven't been really going good between us, and now you've invited me to talk? How could I refuse that? But Nehemiah refuses the conversation. Maybe peace is attainable. Maybe we can reconcile our differences here. And Nehemiah says, no, no, no. Because I know what this is. This is a trap. You have presented me with something that looks good on the surface, but the motives that you have down deep below the surface, I know that those things are false. Now, we don't know how Nehemiah knows this. Maybe Nehemiah had spies that were talking into those camps and were able to report back to him. We don't know. Maybe it was just direct discernment from the Holy Spirit, where the Holy Spirit came in and said, Nehemiah, let's put the brakes on that. That looks pretty good, but no. The thing that should free you and I up as we read this passage is that you and I do not have to accept every invitation from every single person that wants to talk, that wants to engage with us in our life. We don't have to accept every single invitation to come to the table, because maybe the seat that is at the table isn't a seat of honor for us. Maybe it's a seat of ambush. Not every conversation needs for you and I to enter into it, because not every invitation, not every table, not every conversation is designed to be productive and helpful in common interest or in our interest. There are those that have their own agenda, and that agenda might be to distract us, detour us, or convince us to go back to an old lifestyle or old pattern or way of life that we are changing from, that we are transforming from, and they are trying to drag us back into that. It might be someone that just wants one more opportunity to speak negativity into our lives, to tear us down one more time, to sow seeds of doubt in us as much as they can. They might want to just bring confusion to us. Now, as I'm saying this, I am not advocating that you and I go through life on high alert all the time with raised level of suspicion, okay? That is not good and that is not healthy. But you and I have to be wise in how we engage with those who have been adversaries to us. Nehemiah knows that Sanballat has a pattern and a history of behaving a certain way, so he has to be a little bit cautious. Maybe we've had relationships in our life that have a certain pattern of dysfunction or toxicity to them. And that person is trying to drag us back with, hey, let's just talk. Let's go grab coffee together. Maybe it's an ex-boyfriend or an ex-girlfriend. Maybe it's friends that we've known for a really long time that every time we get together with them, we just sort of end up doing things that we regret. It pulls out a certain shadow side of us. You know what I'm talking about? That we're trying to be like, man, how am I really this person? Maybe it's family members who like to dominate and control us, and they like for us to be super codependent upon them instead of allowing us to emerge as our own person. Maybe it's a boss at work that just wants to constantly overwork us and use us as a pawn to further their success. Maybe it's a group of coworkers that we have where every time we get together and all we do is gossip and slander people. And they're just saying, let's talk. I haven't seen you in a while. You've been distant. What's going on? Your life is changing. You're hanging out with new people. You're doing new things. Things are just, let's just get together. And we have to be able to discern, why are we getting together? Because their invitation might have an ulterior hidden agenda to it. Nehemiah responds to Sanballat by sending this reply. I ain't got time for that. And sometimes that needs to be the reply from us, is when the invitation comes, because I am focused on this. It's not just I don't have time for this. It's I've got a mission to fulfill. I'm getting my life back on track. I'm living my life a certain way now. I'm living into the transformation that God has for me. I've got a building project to finish, which is the rebuild of my life. And Nehemiah, he refuses to engage, and he stays focused on the mission. And 4 times, it says in the passage that 4 more times they send the same message, and he sends the same reply back. You see, when some people see you and I, when they see us improving and transforming our lives, and our lives are becoming different, they become more and more desperate. Because there is something about us not improving our lives that they've enjoyed and has benefited them. And their interest is for us not to change. Their interest is for you and I to it's not sinister a lot of times. I don't want to present it like people are being super sinister about things, but they've adapted to the idea that you living your life in a non-godly way, in an ungodly way, they reap benefits from that. And I don't know what those benefits might be, but they're benefiting in some way. And then whenever we change our behavior and we start rebuilding our lives in a godly way, those benefits might just go away that they were receiving from us. And now they're using whatever attempts and avenues that they can to wear us down. And as Nehemiah shows us, those attempts aren't just going to come once. They're going to come over and over and over and over again. And we have to remain focused enough, like Nehemiah, to send the same reply back each and every single time, which is, I ain't got time for that. Kids are really good at this terroristic behavior. This type of warfare that I'm talking about, okay? Like, they come at you, can I have a piece of candy? And you're like, no. 2 seconds later, can I have a piece of candy? And you're like, no. Didn't you hear me the first time? 2 seconds later, they come back. Can I have a piece of candy? And you're like, stop it. You're annoying me. Now, see, that time you didn't say no. You just said, stop it. You're annoying me, right? And pretty soon you start sliding down the slippery slope. By the 15th time, you're like, take this piece of candy and just shut up. You know what I'm talking about? And that's what the enemy is going to do to us. That's what Sanballat is trying to do to Nehemiah, to say over and over again, let's talk, let's talk, let's talk. And every single time Nehemiah remains focused and he says, no, I don't have time for that. Secondly, because Nehemiah stayed focused on the mission, the second thing that he does is he stays focused on the truth. Let's look at verse 5 through 8 here. It says, then the fifth time, so now you see the repetitive nature here, Sanballat now sends his aide to me with the same message, and in his hand was an unsealed letter. So now he's upped the game a little bit. I'm going to ask you the same request. Come to the table with me and let's talk. And here's the letter that he wrote. It is reported among the nations, and Geshem says it is true, that you and the Jews are plotting to revolt, and therefore you are building the wall. Moreover, according to these reports, you are about to become their king, and even appointed prophets to make this proclamation about you in Jerusalem. There is a king in Judah. Now this report will get back to the king, so come, let's get together. And I sent him this reply. Nothing like what you are saying is happening. You are just making it up out of your head. So here's the threat within the invitation that comes. Oh, the king that allowed you to rebuild from Persia, word's getting back to him that instead of rebuilding Jerusalem to be a nice, area for him to now gain more wealth and taxes from under his rule, you're now planning to become a revolutionary, and you're planning to break away from the king in Persia, and you're planning to start your own empire, and you're planning to live in rebellion to the king. What we have here are lies and rumors and slander being spread. And if you and I are not careful, as we're rebuilding our lives, we can get wrapped up in over-focusing on what people say about us and what people think about us, and we lose sight of just living out the truth that we know to be true in our bones. It's not just important for us to know the truth. Everyone else needs to be convinced of the truth too. So if Sanballat is now telling Nehemiah, everybody thinks this about you. You're trying to set up your own kingdom. You're trying to become a revolutionary leader. What does Nehemiah do with this threat of word getting back to the king that he is trying to overthrow the empire? Nehemiah doesn't overly engage in this web of deceit and lies. Because this is just like toxic drama that's trying to be created for Nehemiah right here. He ends up sending a reply, a short reply, and he exposes the false accusations of the lie to the one that made the accusation, to the accuser. But he doesn't even go to the king to try to talk to the king about it. King, you know that I'm not doing this, right? He doesn't turn every single conversation that he's having that has nothing to do with this into this. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where we get so insecure that we've got this whole thing going on where people are making accusations against us. They're calling us names. And every conversation that we enter into comes back to that. And we're like, oh, did you hear what so-and-so said about me? And I'm like, I don't even know who that so-and-so is. Well, let me tell you. And then all of a sudden, you end up in a conversation, and you're like, huh, okay. And every single person that we encounter and that we engage in, we're having that type of conversation with, because we just need people to defend us for some reason, right? We just don't have enough. And it's insecurity and fear that's building up inside of us. It's a fear and an insecurity to have to over-explain, to over-defend, and over-convince ourselves to others. We widen our circle of who knows about it, and we bring way too many people in because we're looping everybody into what's going on, of how we're being accused unfairly. And in doing so, instead of rebuilding our lives and doing what we're supposed to be doing, believing in the truth of what God has for us and what God says about us, now all of our energy is going into just talk and defense, and all of a sudden we're sidetracked. Nobody likes their character being attacked. Nobody likes to be slandered. Nobody likes to be talked bad about, to be said things behind their back that are completely false and completely untrue. Is there anybody in this room that likes that? Just raise your hand. If that's something you like, I would like to get to know you, because that's sort of weird. I don't think anyone likes to hear that type of stuff. How do we respond in that moment? What do we do? Because that is being used as a tactic to delay us, to detour us, and to get us to put all of our energy, our emotions into that, instead of doing what God's called us to do. In the story, in the book, The Story of Civilization, and this is like a work of volumes, Will Durant writes this little illustration. And it says this: when a simpleton abused him verbally, Buddha listened in silence. But when the man had finished, Buddha asked him, "Son, if a man declined to accept a present made to him, to whom would it belong?" The man answered, "To him who offered it." "My son," said Buddha, "I decline to accept your abuse and request you keep it for yourself." That's it. He knew the truth. No more. It's over. It's done. For Nehemiah, the reply was, "You're lying. This is falsehood. This is all in your head. I'm getting back to work." He didn't all of a sudden move into DEFCON 4 or 5, whatever. You know what I'm talking about, where all of a sudden we're no longer paying attention to the work anymore. Now we're trying to do damage control. There's no need to do damage control if we know the truth. If we know who God is, if we know what God says about us, if we know that we're doing what God has called us to do and we're not engaging in the type of behavior that people are accusing us of, we can just keep doing what God's called us to do. That's all. Nothing else is needed. Don't get distracted. Stay focused on the mission. Stay focused on the truth. And finally, we stay focused on the Lord. And this seems like a simple point. Of course we stay focused on the Lord, right? Verse 9. They were all trying to frighten us, thinking, their hands will get too weak for the work, and it will not be completed. But I prayed, now strengthen my hands. In Matthew 14, Jesus calls to Peter out of the boat in the middle of the storm. If you know the story, Jesus comes walking on the water in the middle of a storm. And he calls Peter out, and Peter begins to walk on the water. And as long as Peter stays focused on Jesus, as long as Peter's eyes are on the Lord, he doesn't sink. But when his eyes turn to the wind, to the waves, to the chaos, to the storm, that's when he begins to sink. And you and I, as we rebuild our lives in a godly manner coming out of this pandemic, and as we're doing the right things, the good things, and the godly things, it is the enemy that is going to bring storms our way, and the enemy is going to try to drown us. The enemy is going to try to sink us, and the only way that you and I will stay above the storm, the only way that you and I do not drown, is if we keep our eyes on Jesus. And Nehemiah does this with his prayer. And you and I can strengthen and fortify our focus and our resolve through prayer as well. And Nehemiah's prayer, man, I find his prayer so good and so refreshing because it's 4 words long. I don't know about you, but there's something really beautiful in the fact that all I need to do is give 4 words to God, and my focus and my attention is on him. What does it say in Matthew chapter 6, verse 7? Jesus says, "And when you pray, do not keep on babbling like the pagans, for they think that they will be heard for their many words." And then what does Jesus do? He teaches the Lord's Prayer, which is a very short, easy prayer to read. The thing is that God is so approachable, and God hears us even when we just utter a few words, and sometimes it's just a few words. 4 words is sometimes all we need to speak in order to put our attention on to God. You might be like, Jeremy, how do I keep my focus on God? What do I do? It just sort of seems like I'm getting distracted. Just pray a 4-word prayer and just pray it over again. And every time the distractions come, every time the temptation comes, what's that 4-word prayer? Maybe it's, God, I need you. And every time that the enemy is coming in to distract us, every time that those relationships are coming our way, every time that things are cropping up, trying to detour us and keep us from rebuilding, God, I need you. Every time that we find ourselves getting distracted to where it's like, oh, there's that phone again. I'll just spend 4 hours here. Oh, there's that video game system again. I'll just spend 48 hours there. I won't shower for 2 days, and I'll just eat the Cheeto crumbs that are in the cushions, and I'll just stay focused on that place. And all of a sudden, we realize that we're distracted, and then we say, your will, not mine. Or maybe we just say, Jesus, you are king. Whatever we can do to come back and bring our attention and bring our focus back to God. You see, the world is so full of distractions. So much of what is happening is trying to take our time, our energy, and our focus off of God. And building a godly life is so difficult because there is so much out there trying to get us to do anything but build a godly life. And as Nehemiah here reminds us, it's not good enough to just rebuild the walls. We got to install the gates. What is it that you are trying to rebuild as the worship team comes this morning? What is it that you are trying to rebuild in your life on a more godly foundation coming out of this pandemic? Maybe you've noticed and seen that your personal connection to God has been weakened. And you need to build in more time to spend with God through prayer, study, worship, church attendance, you name it. You have to rebuild that element. Maybe it's you're trying to rebuild friendships. You need to build stronger relationships within Christian circles. Because the friendships and the people that you're hanging around with right now, they're dragging you down, they're dragging you away, and it's compromising you, and it's making your life vulnerable, and you need to build your friendships on the rock of Jesus Christ. Maybe it's your marriage. For many people, they've spent more time with their spouse during the pandemic than ever before. All waking hours, not going to work, maybe working from home, and it can put a strain on a marriage. And you've realized coming out of this pandemic, man, we need to build a stronger relationship together, rooted in Christ. Maybe it's our finances. Maybe we're looking around at our life and we're evaluating what we do, what we spend our money on, and we're saying, man, I need to rebuild. I need to rebuild in a way that I am honoring God with how he has blessed me and stewarded, and I need to steward this well. I need to do better. Man, I'm just investing in myself. I'm putting myself into all sorts of debt for frivolous, needless things. Maybe it's our career. Maybe we're realizing coming out of this pandemic that, man, I need to operate with more integrity in the workplace. Because my church life, I'm one way. My work life, I'm another. Or I'm just engaged in unethical practices. I'm doing things at work where I'm really harming people, lying to people, taking advantage of people. Maybe it's service. Man, maybe the Lord is just pestering us to say, man, I really want your life, Jeremy, to be more engaged with helping people, using your time in a way to volunteer and to give to those who are less fortunate. Maybe it's in our parenting. Maybe we need the strength of the Holy Spirit to become more patient, gracious, and compassionate with our children. As you and I are making growth, and I might not have even named the area that God is working with you on in terms of what it looks like for you to rebuild a more godly life. But whatever it is, the enemy's coming in. And the enemy wants to distract you. The enemy wants to detour you. And he wants to keep the work from being fully completed. And even if we get a lot of the work done, even if we get a lot of the rebuild done, the temptation is going to be, let's just stop at 97%. Let's leave some cracks. Let's leave a little bit of the foundation unattended. Let's not fix that little bit of that leaky roof. Everything's going to be okay. We've done so good with everything else that we've been. Man, like, I deserve to just take a break. I've been doing so good. And Nehemiah shows us and teaches us that we cannot let up. We cannot just let our guard down. We can't just almost finish it or almost complete it. We need to remain focused on the mission, focused on the truth, and focused on the Lord. Are you feeling discouraged this morning? Does it feel to you like you take one step forward and two steps back? Do you find yourself getting easily distracted or sidetracked? You've got the mindset and you've got the aspiration to make right decisions, right choices, right goals, but then in the moment it just seems like we continue to just lose focus and choose what we've known or the wrong thing. Or let me tell you, it doesn't take much to get back on track. Just like Nehemiah, we can just say, Lord, strengthen my hands. In Henry Nouwen's book, The Way of the Heart, and I'm going to close right now with this. An elderly monk was asked, how should one pray? The old man said, there is no need at all to make long discourses. It is enough to stretch out one's hand and say, Lord, as you will, and as you know, have mercy. And if the conflict grows fiercer, say, Lord, help. He knows very well what we need, and he shows us his mercy. As the conflict grows fiercer, Lord, help. And the Lord knows exactly what you and I need. If you find yourself this morning battling with distractions, if you find yourself this morning struggling with veering off course, even though things might be going well and maybe there's like a self-sabotage thing that might happen near the end, or man, all we have to say is, Lord, help. That's it. And God is there with what we need. So this morning, as we close, and as the worship team leads us in this song, I'm going to open up our altar area, and we've got our new stage here where you can come and kneel or you can come and stand. And if you need to say, Lord, help, I invite you to come. If you need the guidance and the help of the Spirit to get you focused on the mission, on the truth, and on God himself, so that we don't lose heart and we stay faithful and strong to the end, I invite you to come forward to pray and say, Lord, help. Our leaders are going to be making themselves available. You don't have to come up here alone. We would love to pray with you. We would love to encourage you. It's as simple as that. Do I need help, Lord? Lord, help. There's no shame in coming to an altar. As we rebuild Uptown Church out of this pandemic, the one thing I don't want to see is for there to be a sense of judgment if people respond to the altar. The altar is a place that we all come and just submit ourselves to the Lord. Even when things are going well, we can come to the altar to just pray and connect with God. There's no judgment. There's no what's going on in their life. We all need that. It's a place to be celebrated, to say, I just need to connect with God. So if you're here this morning and you need help, and you need God's help, especially in the area of staying focused, come forward. We would love to pray with you as the team sings.
Yeah. Walking around these walls, and I thought by now they'd fall.